Spoiler Recap.
Welcome back to the All Spoiler Recap podcast. I'm Julia Cunningham. We go through a film beat by beat, whether it is a low percentage on Rotten Tomatoes, if it's a horror film that has been requested and I spoil it for you, or maybe, a beautiful tribute to Jenna Rollins in The Notebook. You never know what it might be here on the All Spoiler Recap. And I'm sure you were clamoring for Speak No Evil, which is probably on fire at the box office this weekend. I didn't get a chance to go see it multiple times because if I go see a movie to spoil, I like to go and take notes and then go again. Usually I'll go like Friday during the day when no one's really in the theater. I take notes and then I try and go and see it again like Saturday night to get the full theater, reaction to various things within the movie. Haven't had time to see it twice, so I'm going to go this week. That recap will be coming, I promise. But first, I want to bring in my guest before we get into our spoiler recap for today. Corey Burton, who is a return guest who joined me back on number 56, a must-hear, one of my all-time faves, Dante's Peak. But Corey Burton, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be back.
Oh, my God, of course. And we had so much fun with Dante's Peak. First of all, love that film. Never forget. I mean, obviously, a lot of people will get into the confusion of Volcano/Dante's Peak. Like which one is it? Don't worry. It's Pierce Brosnan in this one specifically. As I like to say, it's the film where the grandmother sacrifices herself by walking through the acid lake to save everyone. Iconic moment on film that I think about all the time. But I picked a movie because I was going back and forth, Corey, about do I keep my Shudder account? Because obviously it is prime real estate for something like the All Spoiler Recap, but I don't go to it as much as I probably should. And I was like debating, like, should I cancel my Shudder? Should I keep it? Am I using it enough? So I was kind of scrolling and I saw this poster and I thought, is this a shark attack movie? And when I actually clicked through, because clearly I'm going blind, there was no shark on the poster. But when I read the description and then looked it up, I was like, wow, this movie has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to watch it. Watched it, was like, ooh, this is great. We're going to spoil it. It's a movie called Influencer. It was released back in 2022. Corey, have you seen?
I have never heard of this movie.
Okay, perfect. I think it was kind of a true indie, although it looks kind of expensive. And it, it has one of those mix where it's 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score, which I believe they now call the popcorn meter, is at 70. So it's definitely kind of a mix. And I'll have to get your take after you hear the entire thing. It's a movie where I'm not really familiar with our stars. There's a woman named Cassandra Nod who stars as her name is CW in the movie, which I just kept thinking, the CW. So who comes up with CW as a character name? It must be some sort of homage, I like to think. And then a woman named Emily Tennant who stars as Madison, who's sort of our lead, who I was not familiar with, but was the voice of Polly Pocket on the Netflix series, which I did think was kind of funny. So she will be referred to as Polly Pocket. And I really, to be honestly, not familiar with many of the actors in this. So some of them we will be referring to their names like the CW. So we start with a couple black screen just production companies. And we quickly snap truly to this overgrown, lush green island. But small, not like one of those Marlon Brando owns an island that you have to do an overhead shot. We're talking the entire island fits in the frame. And it appears to be slightly sloped, almost like the shape of a deflated football. And remember, we're looking on it head on. So there's a slope with the height of trees that goes back down. And there are these deep green trees throughout it, sand in the front where you would be able to lay out on the beach, and this giant rock formation to the right side, and some stones just jutting out of the water. The whole thing almost looks, if you imagined Homer Simpson laying on his back. So you get the jut of the island and then his head, and almost like this rock formation looking like he's wearing an eye mask, if that makes sense. But imagine the shape of Homer.
It does.
So we're starting to drone shot across the water, making our way towards our laid out Homer Simpson. And we're getting this da-da-da-da-na-na-na-na-da-da-da-da-na-na-na-na-na-na. This sort of pulsing, not quite tribal, but beat that's coming towards us as we're heading to this island. And the entire view is still from a distance, but we can see as we're getting closer and closer and closer, a tiny figure who's starting to be shown. This figure is laid out on the white part of the beach. And as we get closer, da-da, da-da, na-na, na-na, da-na, na-na, da-na, na-na, we have a more clear shot. It's this woman who's in jean shorts and a seemingly thin striped tank top. And we settle over the body, da-na, na-na, 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 shwoom, and it cuts to black. We get this upbeat voice, still with a black screen, saying traveling is all about experiencing new things. And we get this more like fun, flirty electronic music that comes in. And this woman, Emily Tennant, who voices Polly Pocket on Netflix, so she'll be known as Polly Pocket, is in a bikini top and a sarong, and she's got a backpack on, which gives you the vibe of the equivalent of like glasses and a ponytail. You know what I mean? Where she's going to take those glasses and shake her hair out. Backpacks on women in movies gives that sort of same, like, she's hot, but she's like a nerd because she would be carrying like some cool designer bag. No, she's got a backpack on. She's traveling. And guess what? She's smart. You know what might be in that backpack? Books. So she heads
She's
out.
all that.
Exactly. Like she's all that. She's smart. She's fun. She's with it. And she says, you know, my goal this year would definitely be travel more. And she's walking through the spa that's named Lotus. She heads past the desk. She's going out to this open beach air. And we see that she says, you're so limited if you don't get out to the world and you experience it for yourself. There's this old saying that the world is a book. And if you don't travel, you've only read one page. And she's still power walking through this hotel. And she talks about how there are all these great elements of Asia. And we learn in this moment that she's actually in Thailand specifically. And she's going through what is seemingly an empty kind of hotel, but beautiful, luxurious, like giant pool, palm trees, and all these sort of things. And she's talking on her phone, you know, selfieing about Thailand and this experience she's having. And at one point, we even have an outfit change, and she's taking selfies throughout this property. And now she has a sensible sun hat on. And so, you know, we're getting the, like, oh, she's, quote, influencer, as the movie is called, and she's blogging and vlogging about her experience in Thailand. She says, I feel so at peace here. I loved soaking it all in and really experiencing Asia the way it was meant to be experienced, away from my comfort zone. It's breathtaking. The adventures that find you if you just surrender to what the universe throws at you. I am really seeing Thailand. Meanwhile, we know as we're sitting there watching, seeing, quote unquote, you haven't left the hotel yet. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of influencing where she's not up in it with the locals. She's at a predominantly tourist-filled, but no one there, but that kind of vibe hotel. Meanwhile, as she's describing, quote, seeing Thailand, she takes a picture of her hamburger at the restaurant in the hotel, which, like, is not what I think when I think Thailand, you know?
Not too authentic.
No, not authentic at all. So she's scrolling, influencing about Thailand, and she's scrolling her phone, and she sees what I assume is like a reel or a TikTok from what must be her boyfriend or someone she had dated. And we see him saying, oh, my third rum and Coke, and like clanking his glass into the camera. And she looks annoyed, like sullen face from this. It changes. And not that she's had an exaggerated loving life type look either. I mean, she looks like influencing has beaten her down type thing, you know, where it's like not here to really explore and live life, but checking off whatever box needs to be done. And we get this montage of her eating fruit by the pool and getting a massage, and, you know, no one is around, by the way. It's not like she's even interacting with other people on this trip. And this voiceover comes back in about her living in the moment, saying, you know, there's a certain freedom to not knowing exactly what's coming next. There's so many amazing people here just living in the moment. Meanwhile, no one around. making new friends all around the world. They see things differently and we learn from them. It's such a huge difference compared to America. And I've been loving soaking it all in. So we know that this is all sort of like the facade of what influencing is. And with her, whether it's like she's over it, she's on the build, she's lost interest, she's not inspired, maybe. And we finally see a person at the hotel lounging by the pool. She's in the water. It's this woman that's like olive skinned, dark hair, young, but she also has this giant birthmark on her face, like a surprisingly large birthmark. We're gonna learn that this woman is CW, as we refer to her as the CW. And this birthmark is right below her eye, but it runs from her nose all the way to her ear and hits mid cheek, like a full. God, I wish I knew my shapes better. Trapezoid, I would say, like a trapezoid. I think most likely. And even her emerging out of the water is very like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Phoebe Cates coming out, object of desire, and she's beautiful. She's stunning. Where you realize like there's something striking about her, not only because she's seemingly like, wow, there, like her face has this birthmark, but you're also like, she's so beautiful and like confident compared to this woman who's supposed to be selling this confidence in her travels and in her influencing. It's like night and day between the two of them just within that second of meeting the CW. And she wanders off out to the beach alone. This is Polly Pocket. And she's selfieing and she starts getting all these texts coming through. Ding, 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 ding. And she's posting this video of her watching another amazing sunset. I can't believe I'm here type energy. And these messages coming in being like, we need to talk, girl. I need to fill you in. So she goes back to her hotel room and she puts her tickets and she puts her passport in the desk drawer and she's FaceTiming with a friend who tells her about this hookup that he just had with some cute dum-dum. And he's like, oh, he was so dumb, but like, don't care. We had the time of our lives last night. And she's like, oh, you know, unboxing all this new, like, quote, stuff that she needs to be influencing about, like a series of lotions or whatever. And he's like, those were so hard to get. Did Ryan get those for you? And we learn that Ryan, her boyfriend, who was just cheersing the camera after his third rum and coke or whatever it was supposed to be on the trip with her. And it sounds like maybe he's like also her business manager, which like we know through the history of divas, don't date your business manager. It's one of the red flags. Like it doesn't seemingly work out, but
It leads to problems.
it's usually a lot of problems. It usually makes our divas lose money, sign bad contracts, you know, all those sort of things. And for whatever reason, which we don't know yet, he doesn't go on this trip. She's obviously there alone. He's doing his own thing. And she says, you know, I'm questioning my entire life. And mid-conversation, as she is, after her friend is like, oh my God, my amazing hookup. And she's like, I'm really sad, whatever. And he's like, ugh, gotta go. And literally is like, gotta go. I'll talk to you later. And hangs up. And she's like, ugh, I can't believe you just hung up on me right when I'm about to like get into the tea. But decides to continue on with her influencing. And the next day she sets up her tripod to shoot some content with the lotion. And she knows how to turn it on. You know, she's had dead shark eyes this entire time. She gets in front of that camera, full of life, instantly beautiful, rising of the face. All of a sudden, somehow her face is Botoxed out with filters, and she just looks incredible on the screen. And then the moment as that self-timer goes off, it's literally back to like, meh, energy. That night, she's sitting at the bar, and there's, you know, a few people sitting around, and she's having a martini, pretending to read a book. She's really just endlessly scrolling. And this older man comes up as she starts to take a selfie sitting there with her, quote, book and her definite martini. And he says, oh, let me take that photo for you. And she's like, oh, no, I prefer selfies. Like, I've got it. Thank you, though. And he sees this as an invitation to scooch over closer, even though she just was like, no, thank you. And he sits right next to her and he's like, where are you from? And she's like, oh, I'm from California. He's like, oh, I'm British. what brings you to Thailand? And he's like, oh, the wonderful women. Kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not here for that. Like, I'm an expat and I kind of hang around and I came to just visit and I never left. I really love it. And then he starts being like, and I was only joking about the women. Most of the women are miserable and they're miserable at home and they're miserable here. And she's like, oh, God. Up walks the CW, who comes up to the bar and saves her and is immediately like, oh my God, let me save, like, come walk with me. Oh my God, there's like so much fun outside. Let me show you around. And so they start walking out, and the CW is like, you should be careful around men like that, like leering men in Thailand. He seems harmless, but he's totally the type of person that will like drug you and rape you. And you're like, whoa, the CW. I mean, you're not wrong, but it was a very sort of blunt, like, you will get raped being alone here. And I mean, there is something about solo women travel where she does feel like, oh, she's in this fancy hotel. There's seemingly no one there, but also, will anyone hear your screams type energy when you're traveling? So they're walking around. They go on this like candlelit walkway, and she reveals that, yeah, she was supposed to be here on this with her boyfriend, and he bailed at the last minute. And Polly Pocket is like, this place is just so magical, and I thought I was going to have a magical time, and I thought I was going to be here sharing this with him, and I also thought I was going to like meet all these people and like do all these things, and I've just been sitting around and doing nothing. And the CW is like, well, what are you doing tomorrow? She's like, shrug emoji. She's like, okay, we're going out. So the next day at dawn, they ride together on a moped. Kiss? Question mark, no. But instant like friend connection. And they watch the sunrise. And this is so weirdly emotional and impactful and important to Polly Pocket. And she immediately is like, gotta film a selfie of this. I'm just so moved by this sunrise. And as she's starting to film, the CW is immediately like, oh, like, turns away, but turns in a way that she turns so that she pulls her birthmark kind of into her shoulder, where she almost is like, no, not my, like, I don't want my face in the shot. And Polly Pocket is like, since when are you so shy? Meanwhile, I'm like, you met her 12 hours ago. What do you mean, since when are you so shy? And she goes, she's like, I just don't like being on camera. And it's like, I don't want it. And Polly Pocket's like, oh, no, of course. And you can tell that the reaction of Polly Pocket is like, oh, because I'm in the business of like perfection and you have this birthmark, you must not want your face shown because you feel different or other or something like that. Because you can tell Polly Pocket like this kind of nod of like, look at me being empathetic. I get it. When really it's probably like she's a psychopath, question mark, exclamation point. But the CW takes a photo of her with film and is like, yeah, I'm more into physical media anyways. So they continue on their tour. They visit elephants and the CW. So she doesn't really have any family and they're sort of scattered. And Polly Pocket is like, wow, that must be so freeing. And she goes, it has its ups and downs. And you have to like be okay and centered in what some people would call loneliness and all that kind of stuff. And they really have this kind of bonding moment about it. And they moped onto a busy, bustling street. And the CW is dressed all cool in like shredded black jean shorts and a tube top and black boots. And Polly Pocket is very Polly Pocket in like a dusty rose-colored cotton dress and flat sandals. And she's got a backpack, of course, because she might need to read a book while sitting at the bar. And you can just tell it's sort of like nerd energy and confident energy. And they strut across the street and Polly's all hunched over. And they get across the street. And of course, the CW is like teasing her for taking pictures of her noodles. And she says, I prefer to eat my food, not photograph it. And they're kind of laughing. And she goes, this is totally the type of place my boyfriend would have taken me. He's kind of the adventurous one. And she's like, why isn't he here? And she just doesn't really say anything. She's just kind of like sad face. But the CW notices these two super cute guys dancing in the background. And she's like, let's just like have fun tonight. So then we get this montage of them walking out, drinking, dancing, having fun. And they head back to the hotel and they hug and they separate. And Polly Pocket genuinely is like, I really wish I had met you sooner. This was awesome. This was so fun. And thank you. So she keeps walking down the path to her hotel room, but she can't find her key in her giant backpack. And as she gets closer, the front door is wide open. And she walks in, and her place is trashed. And of course, her passport, which was in the top drawer, gone, of course. They call the police. Polly Pocket is all teary-eyed, and the CW helps her. And the next day, they sit poolside, and they're looking at all these forms that are in Thai. And she's like, what is all this stuff? Like, I don't even know what it's asking. And the CW goes, oh my gosh, this is where it says first name, last name, mom's maiden name. And I'm like, mom's maiden name? Why would you need that on a form?
Red flag.
Yeah, red flag / I think we've all seen Broke Down Palace. You don't sign anything that you can't read the language. You're going to end up in a prison forever. So the moment she said mom's maiden name, I was like, oh, the spidey sense. So the CW is like, look, I'll help you fill it all out, but it's going to take 2 weeks, and you're going to have to pick up your new passport in Bangkok at the embassy. She's like, oh my God, is this awful for me to say? But like, I really don't want to be here for another 2 weeks. And I just like want to head home, and I can't be in this hotel, and I can't pay for another 2 weeks. Like, this was like part of like the trip. Seemingly that she got paid to influence there. And the CW is like, why don't you come crash with me? I'll show you around and it'll be super fun. And Polly Pocket is like, no, I wouldn't want to put you on. She's like, it's going to be fine. Let's start. Name. And they like start filling out the form. Polly Pocket takes a shower when she hears the phone ringing, and it's her boyfriend on FaceTime. And he's running around an apartment. Even though he FaceTimes her, he has no time for her. He's in this like what looks like a giant loft apartment. He's like, a mile away from the phone. It's like propped up on his desk, and yet he's over at the kitchen, and he's putting things in boxes, and he's packing, and he's running around. And she's like, I mean, do you want to talk to me? And he's like, I'm busy. We've got this big thing tomorrow. What time is your flight? And I don't know if I can pick you up. Like, it's so busy tomorrow. You're going to have to Uber and all this stuff. And she's like, I'm not going to make my flight. My passport got stolen, and I'm getting a temporary one, but it's not going to arrive for 2 weeks. And he literally stops and puts down his coffee, and he like walks over. And she can tell as he's walking closer, he's annoyed. Like, this is an inconvenience for me. Not like, oh my God, like, what do we do? And I'm so sorry. It's like, ugh, you're screwing my plan up. And her reaction is like, don't get mad at me. Like, this is not my, like, I didn't do this on purpose. What is this reaction? And he's like, this is so you. That's his reaction. I mean, really. So she shrugs and she's like, you're the one who wanted me to be here. I didn't. I wanted us to do this trip together. And, he sits down and they start this argument, and he kind of tries to like micromanage the situation. And about like, what about the embassy? And have you been there yet? And it's really like her reaction is just so ick from it, and very much like back off. Like, I'm a full functioning adult, even though clearly he has his hands in everything, or maybe I should say claws. I'm not sure yet. I don't know how I feel about Ryan. And he says, I don't know why you're getting upset with me. I'm trying to help. And Polly Pocket musters up enough strength to say, I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks, and I think we should break up. And Ryan is like, you know what? I think you're overreacting. I think this is a tense situation. Why don't you call me again in the morning when you've calmed down, when you've slept on it? And it's like, boop, hangs up.
Wow.
She wants to cry, but, it's hung up. And, she's like so over it. But you can tell that it took everything in her almost to break up with him. Or try. And his reaction of just like, no, we're not breaking up, also is so telling about like their relationship in general. So she immediately posts that she's going to be in Thailand for another 2 weeks and exploring with her fun new friend. They climb a cave. They're wearing headlamps. They see bats. They're like at one of those huts over the water. The CW is just constantly smoking cigarettes, just like real, sort of like badass, I smoke cigarettes energy. Polly Pocket is journaling all about her experiences. They're doing photo shoots. And they take a ferry to a new location. And as soon as they arrive off of the ferry, the CW like rips the cover off of her motorcycle. So it's seemingly like a further island. I'm not sure exactly the layout or where we were, like in terms of how far are we from Bangkok. Obviously, we're in a more sort of like remote area, but heading maybe towards more of like a city vibe, or are we heading more to more remote type vibes? It's unclear. And they get onto the, the whole vibe, and they head out and they head to this modern looking glass house in, now we can sort of see what feels like maybe truly the middle of nowhere, but like a suburban area, but not like you could walk to a bar or a grocery store, seemingly having to drive somewhere. And they walk in, and Polly Pocket picks up a book off of the table. And the first page says, like, in a handwritten, like, signed, like, Becky Wilson. And she just, like, looks at it sort of like, oh, who's Becky? Like, oh, that must be maybe a friend or someone left a book behind type energy. And the CW is just like, make yourself at home. And she reveals over dinner, she's like, I have a surprise for you. In the morning, we're going to go on another adventure. So they jump the next morning on this little dinghy, which also now are becoming red flags. Anytime, basically, a stranger or a bachelorette party wants to get on a dinghy without a captain in a boat that, like, you would not be able to comfortably drive, do not get on these, okay? I'm not saying you're necessarily going to be murdered, but it's giving you're going to be murdered energy. It's giving I'll be right back energy, truly. By the way, the sun isn't even up. It's pitch black, so you're being just driven off into the middle of nowhere. And Polly, of course, tries to, like, film it, and CW is like, not even worth filming yet. Wait until we get there. And we cut to them in daylight, still, like, on the water. So it just makes you be like, oh, my God, she's been on this boat from literally darkness to sunrising to broad daylight. And it's like, how much longer? No response. Red flag. If you can't be told where you're going or what's happening, I don't love it. Now, they pull up, Corey, to the Homer Simpson laying on his back, flattened football, little island. They park. The CW is like, oh my gosh, my dad had a sailboat. I spent so much time out on the ocean, and I just, like, love doing things like this. And Polly Pocket walks up the sand, and she's, seeing as the CW is tethering the boat, and she walks up to what looks like a man-made bench almost. Like, there's stacked logs with a giant log across it. And as she gets closer, there are notches carved into the log, the wood. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's a giant space, and there's 1, 2. So 6 total, but not like in the way that you would cross a 5 and then do 6. It's like 4, a set of 4, and a set of 2. And she's sort of like, looking at it. Like, what does this mean? And she immediately pulls her phone out. And of course, there's 0 cell phone service. What do you think? There's a tower on that island? What are you doing? The CW is like, you finally get a break. And they kind of laugh. And that night, they make a fire on the beach. And Polly Pocket says, oh my gosh, this is like giving me these memories of being a kid. And when I was like in camp, we would sit around the fire and we would tell scary stories. And there's this one girl who would always be like the scariest and tell these stories, and also be like, the one that kind of saw through everything or knew the end of the story or whatever. And she would definitely be like, oh my God, the CW brought you out to the middle of nowhere, all this way out to kill you. And I would laugh, but like, I mean, it is sort of like, oh my God, here we are at a campfire in the middle of nowhere. Like, no one can hear you scream. And she's trying to be like, ha 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 ha, like, you're not going to kill me, right? LOL. The CW does a hint of a laugh, and she goes, no, I'm not going to kill you. And Polly Pocket's like, well, that's disappointing. And the CW stares directly into the fire. Like, we see her in this shot through the flames. She says, no, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to leave you here. And Polly Pocket turns towards her, kind of like, what? And the CW says, first, you're going to wake up alone. And then you'll realize I'm gone. And you'll check your phone, but it's useless out here, so that's not going to help. No shipping lines out here. And the closest land is miles away. And you'll start to look for food. Good luck with that. It's funny, you're surrounded by all this water, but you can't drink any of it. So you'll start to get really thirsty. You think it'd be painful, but after a while, you just start seeing things. I've heard actually it's like pretty euphoric, like almost euphoric. And if I had to guess, I'd say you'll last maybe 3 or 4 days at the most. And the CW looks away from the fire and directly at Polly Pocket. And she says, you'll slowly fade into obscurity. And like all of the other girls, no one's going to come looking for you. You'll cease to exist, gradually rotting away as the sand crabs eat your flesh. And there's just this long pause from Polly Pocket just staring at her. And the CW has faced the fire again and looks up at her from side eye, kind of like, what is her reaction? Then stares right at her. And Polly Pocket just is like, ah, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I like that. That is funny. And the CW's like, and starts laughing, like, you don't realize I'm being dead serious. Polly Pocket, holding a glass of wine, is like, well, here's the thing. You have one fatal flaw in your diabolical plan. People would notice I'm gone. I'm an influencer. And she does this sort of shruggy emoji, like, influencer. And the CW kind of turns up her nose and says, you sell products to little girls. Do you really think they'd come looking for you? I bet if I took over your account, no one would notice. Polly Pocket's like, honestly, that would be a relief. Like, I'm pretty sure they would notice, though. Besides, I thought you hated social media. Does it make you happy? And Polly Pocket says, well, I don't feel alone. That's something. And the CW's like, but nobody actually cares. Like, you feel entitled to thinking that people should follow you, which makes you believe you are the center of the universe, the star of the story, but no one is. Polly Pocket laughs a little bit and stands up with her glass of wine and declares, oh, we are 100% in my story, and then dances around the fire like a true narcissistic influencer. At this point, and I hadn't even thought about this, Corey, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, all of a sudden we get Jack Rabbit Picture in association with Diamond Cutter Films. My God, the credits come in.
How much time has passed?
26 minutes and 20 seconds. I knew you were going to ask me that.
Wow. You haven't mentioned a font or anything. I just thought it had already happened.
Isn't that crazy? Even when it happened, I literally paused and was like, mind explosion. I didn't even realize we had no credits. I mean, but I'm kind of like, aren't you in it right now?
I'm in it.
Like,
Wow.
it's crazy. I have to say, it's like longest intro to a Law and Order beat that we have ever seen. By the way, a white, thin Arial font giving us our movie credits. And it's the next day. And the fire is burnt out. You know, we're getting as like that dance sequence transitioning to daylight. We're getting our Arial fonts, and the CW is smoking as the credits are rolling in. And I'm screaming because the credits are rolling in. And she gets up and she grabs the backpack and she grabs Polly Pocket's backpack and she gets into her boat and she drives off as she said she would. The camera pans back to the beach as we see her driving off in her dinghy to this electronic muser as we inch closer and closer to Polly Pocket, who is sleeping on two pillows. She left her two pillows and glasses of empty wine next to her, although we have to believe that she was drugged. I mean, I assume, you know what I mean? Like, sure, they could have split a bottle of wine, but to her to be like passed out, not hearing the dinghy, like you're asleep on the beach, like she had to have been slipped something over the course of the night, I assume. And we fade to black and we get this VO. Everything is so much better now that I've decided to stay. It's 3 weeks later. And we see this Isuzu SUV taxi. This is a pickup truck with basically like a cage over the pickup part that forms two benches as seats, as if you're like on a tractor at a pumpkin patch. And we see what we assume is the back of Polly Pocket holding up her phone, influencing. This voiceover picks back up with, you know, this shot of Thailand as we're getting. Thailand really speaks to me. It's such a rich, vibrant country. Sometimes you just don't know what a new place has to offer. And we cut to this pristine room with this giant tub overlooking the water. Very modern, everything white and sleek, minus the cord from the TV. Somehow they got that wrong. And the voiceover continues. You know, every day feels so different. I like to get up around 5:30 a.m. I get so much done, and I love being a morning person. The early bird gets the worm. And the camera pans through the hotel room showing like the toiletries and the electric toothbrush and breakfast being made and emails and my Instagram account. And we see a DM from her boyfriend or ex that says, you can't just stay there forever. There's a bunch of people who want to meet you here. Just respond to me. I'm more than happy to talk through this. But if you're just going to play this silent game, it's so immature. And then there's another message like days later that says, what do I care? Have fun. We get this overhead shot of the swimming pool, and it's the CW swimming in a very high cut one-piece swimsuit. It's giving full vagina, full thong, full tan line. She grabs a towel and heads inside as the camera kind of pulls away to show the giant, almost apartment-like versus hotel room where it's like, oh, I don't even think this was a hotel. I think it's like she rented like a mansion style Airbnb, or at least like a seemingly pristine kind of like overlooking the water swimming pool, very expensive looking modern place. And we keep getting this narration about being authentic, etc., as the CW lays out Polly Pocket's dresses. And we see on the counter a blonde wig, which is why through this various narration, we've only seen the back of her head, because we know Polly Pocket blonde, the CW, dark-haired, cigarette-smoking vixen. And we see her fake Polly Pocketing all over Thailand in the blonde wig and the big hat and her dresses, shooting selfies across town. But we know in the visual, because of this birthmark, that it's the CW. She goes to the ATM using Polly Pocket's card, taking out tons of cash. We see her posting like with an entire group like of some sort of like animal foundation, and the man takes a photo with Polly Pocket's phone, and we see the birthmarks. We're like, okay, what is she doing exactly? And she goes home and she photoshops Polly's face over her face in a way that I've only seen in the Sigourney Weaver classic Copycat, where it's like somehow the technology in movie kind of face structure is that of 1995, when Sigourney adds her own face to the invite for the killer to come meet her. Blown away. But she even does video Photoshop, and it's incredible work. Like, it looks exactly like what you would think, but very kind of heavily filtered too, where you would think, has this woman gone missing in Thailand and has someone taken over her identity? It's unclear. We even see her almost staring at like coding, almost like she went to deepdarkweb.com and knows how to do all sorts of stuff. It's very like The Net with Sandra Bullock. Meanwhile, we also see her in a closet where she's turned it into a dark room where she's processing her photos from her, quote, real camera, end quote, art. And she has all of these, Polly Pocket credit cards and her driver's license. She's paying everything with her cards. Meanwhile, we're getting this VO again about her, quote, new life. And we hear, a phone call with a credit card company asking to increase the credit limit. So she's just basically taken over her life. And then the big announcement. I've decided to take a break from social media. We all need a break sometimes. Not sure when I'll be back, but wanted to thank you all for being there for me. I love you all. And she hits send on the Instagram. And her username, by the way, because our character is actually named Madison, is Madison1, aka Polly Pocket 1, which is like so dumb. Anyways, she posts the digital version of an actual camera shot that like the CW took of Polly Pocket, and we see her put all these pictures of Polly Pocket up on the bulletin board. And that night, the CW smokes a cig. She takes her motorcycle through town. She relaxes at dinner, but she's alone. She's alone. She stares out at the beach. She heads to a club. She goes outside to smoke a cig. She sees a beach rave, everyone living their best life and influencing in a way. And she smokes another cig. And then she just starts searching Bangkok. Because as much as she hates the influencer lifestyle or whatever, she's living it. And she's like obsessed with it. And even though she doesn't realize it, she is influencing. She's taken over this woman's identity. So she starts searching and she settles on this woman in this Shishi Lala hotel. And she clicks on the photo and then the profile, and it's a woman named Jessica Teigen. And the bio says, "Welcome to my colorful world." And there are Instagram stories saved in like Turkey and Greece and France, and she has 812,000 followers. Even though she posts like a basic bitch. And she sees that she travels solo extensively. So, next stop, Bangkok, because clearly she's bored and she needs the thrill of it or whatever else is grabbing her. And we see Jessica Teigen having a drink and leaving and getting into like a very kind of fun karaoke, almost looking tuk-tuk. And the CW follows behind her and they walk through this like intense electronic music and this bustling street. And again, the CW is following her and she follows her into this tiny little stall. And she picks up this statue of what is seemingly something you would see in like a temple in Thailand. And she's holding the statue and the CW turns and faces her and says, "It's fake." And this woman is like, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "It's fake jade. There's a better place up the street with real jade and really good prices for it." And the woman turns around and she's like, "Oh, no, it's totally fine. I'm buying it for my sister who like doesn't know the difference. And it's just like something stupid to pick up. Like it's not, I don't really care. But thanks." And she like turns around, buys it and just like walks out. Is not warm, very much just like, "Ugh, I can't believe you even just spoke to me" type energy. Continues on her way. The CW watches her walk out and is kind of shocked that she wasn't able to worm her way in the way she did with our sort of like empty-souled Polly Pocket, who was like craving human decency and friendship and just didn't want to be alone, etc. So the next day, she's staring at her Instagram in this fancy schmancy high-rise hotel, and she settles on a picture like looking at Jessica's, and it's like a woman It's a photo of 5 women. They're in all white and they're leaping in a field. And the caption says, "Feeling alone, community is the first step to finding your inner self." And she keeps scrolling, being like, "Join our team," and all this kind of stuff. Some sort of wellness. So she sees her again at the hotel bar. And the CW goes up this time and is like, "Oh, it didn't work trying to help her. I have to fan out and worship her." So she immediately is like, "Oh my God, I promise I'm not following you. I don't know if you remember, but I saw you yesterday at the shop." And the thing is like, I totally recognized you. I actually follow you. And I went up to you, but I didn't know what to say. But then I also was like, "Oh my God, I'm sure you know how to deal with those places." And then I felt embarrassed because I'm like a total fan. And now I see you at my hotel bar. It's like I have a second chance. And the woman is just staring at her. But the CW reads the room and is like, "So sorry. I got ahead of myself again. So sorry." And turns and walks away. And Jessica yells after her, "You follow me?" Like, oh my God, hook, line, and sinker. We cut to them having a drink, and the CW saying, "Yeah, I was supposed to be here, with my boyfriend, but he totally bailed on me, but I decided to come on my own." And Jessica is slurping down a martini with 15 olives in it. And she says, "Honestly, in order to grow, you have to be able to thrive on your own." And she's like, "You are so right. And like, it is so cool how you travel all the time." And she goes, "It took me a long time to do it comfortably and to do it the way I wanted to, but like, you can do it too." And the CW says, "Oh my God, there's this awesome place like on the beach, but, I don't know if like you want to come join me. I've got this like mansion that we like basically rented." And literally Jessica's like, "How big?" I mean, literally hook, line, singer. So the next day, Jessica's doing a whole photo shoot, and the CW steals her hotel room key while they're sitting out. Because, of course, she has her bag there. She's like having someone take her photos. And Jessica comes back to her and is like, "I'm so sorry. I have to go to this client dinner. I've been blowing it off all week, but like, this is basically my last night to do it. So I've got to go. But text me because I'm going to go out after and you can totally meet up. It's not going to be like a crazy long dinner. Put on something fun." Meanwhile, of course, the CW goes straight back to her hotel room, knowing that she's at dinner, and obviously robs her. Jessica comes back to her hotel with the CW watching outside, obviously smoking a cigarette, scrolling her phone, and she gets the call. And she's like, "Oh my God, Jessica! Like, oh my God, hey girl, what is up with you?" We cut to them both on a boat, a ferry, back to the quote, "awesome place," end quote. As they walk up, there's rose petals all over the path, within the home, up into the kitchen. And Jessica's like, "Oh my God, maybe your boyfriend did show up after all." And the CW is like, "Yeah, maybe." And so she walks in and there's a table set. And the boyfriend is like, "You made it." And all of a sudden he's like, "Wait, who are you?" And they're like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Polly Pocket's boyfriend. Who are you?" And she's like, "Oh, right. You must be Ryan." And Jessica, of course, is like completely confused. And she's like, "What?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, no, sorry. I like let my friend stay here while I was gone." And Jessica's like, okay. And then the CW says, "I'm sorry. Polly Pocket told me that she broke up with you." And he's like, "Yeah, that sounds like Polly Pocket." And then he says, "It's weird though, because Polly never mentioned someone was staying here. And that's also not like her. And this place is under her name, so I'm actually paying for it. So she definitely would have told me." And Jessica's like, "Look, is everything good?" And he's like, "No, totally. Like, you guys seem lovely, and here's the food, and she's not here, and basically the CW is like, no, she's, I think she was like doing some day traveling and I'm sure you'll hear from her. He's like, okay, well, I'll take her room. And the CW turns to Jessica and is like, hungry? So they sit down and she, of course, is like, I'll be right back. And like immediately goes to her dark room, pulls down all the photos. The next morning, they're all like awkwardly walking around and Ryan's like clearing up the kitchen. And he all of a sudden gets a phone call from Polly Pocket. And he goes to answer the phone and she's like, I'm not there. And I don't want you there. And why did you come after me? And we've broken up. Meanwhile, the CW is using some sort of Word document technology, Corey, that I've never seen before, where she types out words like it's over or we broke up. And then it says it over the phone. But it is a little like we broke up, like a little stunted in a way. But he ultimately hangs up with her. And Jessica comes downstairs and is like, all right, are we ready to go? And Ryan is like, yeah, what's your plan today? And she's like, oh my God, are we going to go? Like, what are we doing? And the CW is like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just got this like job thing that came in. I really need to focus on it. And Ryan is like, well, I'll go. No, like, it sounds fun. Like, let's do it. And the CW is like, you know what? FOMO, I'll go with you guys. Because obviously she doesn't want Ryan to be alone with Jessica and put together all these key missing pieces. So they head to the beach and Ryan's photographing Jessica while the CW is getting food nearby at like a little shack. And Ryan says, what is her deal? Because Polly Pocket would never act this way. And he's like, and it's just weird behavior because her room got ransacked. She lost her passport. Something isn't adding up. And even if she's mad at me, whatever, we would always talk. And Jessica has a face like, really locking in on the robbery. The CW comes running up like, food's here! Like, could not be more excited to break up that conversation. And later, they're on a giant rock, and Ryan is looking out, and Jessica is sitting on the rock. And the CW is a little bit further away, obviously smoking a cigarette. And we are having a nice time. And the CW says, I know this is like super fun, but we should probably head back because we don't want to be climbing on these rocks when it's dark out. And Jessica says, yeah, we should probably go check to make sure that our rooms weren't broken into. And the CW takes this long drag on her cig, like, F. But then says, you'd be surprised how often it happens here. Drag of cigarette. You guys coming? That night, they head to the club. And this song from this artist Swersy called Dancing on My Glock is playing, an appropriate hip-hop song. And the CW sees on her phone that Jessica wants to send a DM to Polly Pocket because, of course, she has all of her accounts. And the message says, hey, you don't know me, but I know your boyfriend, Ryan. I need to talk to you about your roommate. Ryan said you had your room broken into. Is that true? I had the same thing happen to me recently. Let me know if you're free to chat. The CW realizes that Jessica, as this has happened, has left. And the CW jumps into a cab, heads home where Jessica has already returned home, and it's starting to rain. And as she's walking in, the CW sees that there's like a parked cab there. And she goes, oh, we actually don't need it anymore. Thank you so much. And pays. She goes inside and Jessica, of course, already has her bag packed. And she's like, oh my God, you're back. And she's like, you're leaving? And Jessica goes, thank you so much for everything. But I'm leaving and I've got a cab. And she goes, oh, I saw that cab outside. And I didn't know why it was here, so I paid him and I told him to leave. So I thought maybe you hadn't paid or something, and I didn't know why he was here. And she goes, well, I told him to wait, that I would be leaving. But that's fine. I'm going to call another one. And all of a sudden she goes, did I do something? Like, what's going on? She goes, I don't want to get into it, but I want my own space. No, what did I do to you? And she goes, I don't know. I think it's weird that Polly Pocket was robbed and you two were together, and then I was robbed and we were together. And then you said you booked this with your boyfriend, but actually Polly Pocket booked it and it was with her boyfriend, and you've never mentioned her. And it's just like really weird. And the CW just stares at Jessica and she goes, look, I think I know what you're up to. Oh, really? What's that? I think you were taking advantage of her, and you're not going to do that to me. The CW's like, how dare you energy? Like, Polly Pocket was my friend. She's like, if you want money, here. And she pulls out like a wad of bills. And she's like, here, it doesn't even matter to me. Just take this. And she goes, I don't even think you two were friends, to be honest. And the CW says nothing. And she doesn't accept the money. And she says to her, you know what? There was something about you. I knew it night one. And I didn't know what it was. But you are effing creepy. And the CW looks up from under her hair. And as Jessica walks past her, she turns and slams her into the door frame, knocking her to the ground. She starts screaming. She's like, you don't know anything about me, and I don't want your money, you entitled bitch. Jessica, having a severe head wound, starts crawling out the front door. And the CW, or excuse me, not the front door, but actually the back door towards the pool. And the CW climbs on top of her and starts strangling her, saying, I really wish we could have finished what we started. Then you really would have seen the truth. And meanwhile, Jessica, being choked, is like, they won't even notice you're gone. Nobody cares. They never do. And then the CW stands up and puts her stiletto up in the air and takes the heel of the stiletto and puts it right below the Adam's apple, like right where your like throat hole is. And she stomps her. Disturbing. I was like, have we seen that on screen? Like, so gross. Death by stiletto, literally. She then tucks a dead Jessica into a suitcase and zips it shut. In that moment, Corey, Ryan, of course, comes home with a bunch of people from the club, turns on the music to hang by the pool. Jessica's in a suitcase right at his feet. There's blood all over the stone in the door frame. And the CW says everyone needs to leave. Polly Pocket does not want you here. And he's like, wait, where's Jessica? She told me she was getting a hotel. She goes, oh no, she was too drunk. She went to bed. Don't worry about it. And he's like, oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm just having some friends over, and they get into the spat. He ultimately is like, fine, whatever, mom. Sends everyone home. The CW obviously smokes a cig. She's very stressed out. She's like, stress smoking. She calms down, and then she grabs a giant butcher knife. She heads up to Ryan's room when she gets this chime, a text message. She goes to her phone. She picks it up. And it reads, Ryan tagged Polly Pocket in a photo. So she opens it. And it's a photo of Jessica, but she's at the forefront, and it's a really like beautiful photo of her. And then there's full street between them. And on the sidewalk across the way is the CW, where we get a full front view of her, and she's looking at her phone. And the caption says, great day with Jessica and at Polly Pocket 1 apostrophe S, weird ass friend. LOLOL. And she just stares at the photo. She puts the butcher's knife down. The next morning, the CW is at the table, and there's 3 plates for breakfast, 2 of which are eaten as if a dead body in a suitcase ate a plate of breakfast. And she says, I really wanted to apologize for last night. And he goes, "Did Jessica leave already?" And she's like, "Oh my God, yeah, she had to rush home. Did she not message you?" And he goes, "Actually, I haven't checked my phone. This looks good though, thanks." And he starts eating. And she goes, "Look, I feel bad. I shouldn't have tried to kick you out. You can stay until Polly Pocket gets back. I won't say anything." And he pulls out this phone and he sees that Polly Pocket has posted a photo of Polly and a random man. And it says, quote, "New love of my life," with a heart emoji and heart eyes emoji. Ryan immediately jumps on his Vespa, overcome with emotion, seeing that his alleged ex-girlfriend has a new love. He's photographing the island across the way, and guess what it looks like? The Homer Simpson Island. When the CW pulls up and he tells her the whole account went downhill, he says, "I just don't believe she's in this new relationship. I don't understand what's happening. Like, look at this photo I took of us." And he holds up the phone and he shows this photo of Polly Pocket holding this oversized bear that you would like win. And he's like, "This was a photo I took of her and it's beautiful and it's full of life. I helped her. I helped her be who she wanted to be. And now these photos are like 2D and lifeless. And it's just not her." And the CW is like, "Well, maybe this is who she wants to be now." And he's like, "No, it's not possible." And he's like, "You have a really unique look and like a different look, and I could help you." And she's like, "Ugh, gross." Meanwhile, she takes him back to the apartment in a tuk-tuk, and they end up going out. Like, you would think like they would head home, but they go out, they get dinner, and she's like, "I'll get our drinks from the bar." She drops some sort of pill that fizzes right away. And he's describing her social media still. He's like, her social media had gravity to it. And he's like, "No, literally, you're so unique, but weird too. But I could help you. And I just don't know what's going on." He's drugged, slipping kind of in and out. She takes him home in a tuk-tuk. And he rests his shoulder on her. She walks him inside. She takes him to his room and throws him on the bed and closes the door. And she pulls her hair back like, oh, she's going to kill him or something. And she pulls him up. She takes off his shirt, lays him back down. She takes off his pants, throws a condom on the floor, then unlocks his phone with his face. She deletes the image where he calls her, quote, weird, and then lays nestled against his side. The next morning, Ryan wakes up and the CW kisses his neck and says, "Ugh, that was quite a night." And he rolls over like, "What? What?" He looks down, he's like, "Oh my God, I'm naked. There's a condom on the ground. What happened?" He's leaving. He's over it. The CW drives him to his ferry by Vespa. And she says, "It sucks you have to go." And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Get home safe." He's like, "You too." He gets on the ferry. He climbs to the very top and he's looking out at the water. And he turns and faces back to where the ferry stand is. And there's the CW sitting on her Vespa, watching them float away. And she smokes a cigarette. And we cut to her sitting back at home, burning the wig and the dresses and all of her stuff, her passport. She takes the journal and keeps it for whatever reason. And she's smoking a cig, obviously. And we fade to black. This real moment of her being like, case closed, nailed it, got rid of everyone, we're fine. And we see Ryan, obviously, and what we learn is a flashback. Because in this entire time, he's had this kind of like small ponytail with like blonde streaks. And he has short, dark hair. And he's scrolling through Polly Pocket's like basic bitch Instagram. And we meet their very first meeting. And we learn that his friend was messaging girls on different accounts, and that's how they actually met. And he takes the photo of her with the oversized bear that they just won at like the carnival, like video games or whatever. And they talk about her Instagram, and he says, you could tap into a huge following with that photo. Like, there's something so refreshing about you. Like, you live it, and there's this quality of energy and empathy and emotion in you, and you're just so incredible. And like, there's money in it, and I could help you. We could work together. And she's like, oh my God, is this like a ploy to see me again? But you can see how there was something pure and sweet about her that obviously has morphed over time from social media, from mental health, from maybe even their own relationship with him already being like, I'm that thing that pulls it out of you. There definitely is maybe some sort of control issue that they suffered. And we see that he's not on the ferry anymore, but investigating her Instagram. And he goes to the location of the photo shoot of Polly Pocket and her, quote, new love of her life. And he goes to the front desk and is like, have you seen this woman? And asks all these people. And he ends up sitting at the bar. And the same expat from the very beginning sits down. And he goes, oh man, you look sad. Like, what's going on? I've seen that look. Someone broke your heart. And he's like, oh, my girlfriend, like, have you seen her? And he's like, I don't think so. And then he goes, oh, well, a few weeks ago she was robbed, and I don't know, she weirdly came back here even though she had been robbed here, which is like she would never do. Like, she knew how to travel. And the old man is like, oh, wait, yeah, no, I remember that. Like, she got robbed. She made a big fuss of it. She left the next day. But no, I haven't seen them since. And Ryan's like, them? And then he goes, yeah, she was with a girl with like, I mean, she had like this giant birthmark. Like, the two of them were together. And he's like, but she was here yesterday. She posted this photo. And the guy goes, not possible, because it's been cloudy. We're in rainy season. We haven't seen the rain in like 3 weeks. Like, your girlfriend had the sun, not anymore. And Ryan is like, oh my God. So he calls her friend, who she had FaceTimed at the beginning of the movie, and is like, what do you think about this? And he's like, I just think it's so weird. And the boyfriend is like, no, I know. Like, she didn't tell me about it. I just want to know if you've talked to her. And he's like, no, she hasn't even told me about this new boyfriend. And like she tells me everything. And Ryan's like, wow, she hasn't even told you? Like, this is so effed up. And as he's hanging up, he's like, Ryan, you can do better than Polly Pocket. I'm like, what? What kind of friend? Get out of here. Who are all these people? It's so fake. So he starts to investigate. He's looking at the Instagram, and he's looking at one of the videos of her, quote, talking. And he's like, God, these are so Photoshop looking, like filtered. He does it in super slow motion. And as he goes through the video, shot by shot, he realizes there's a birthmark showing through one image. And he realizes that the CW is more psychotic than just creepy, perhaps. He goes racing to the CW's house. He sneaks in, and after driving his bright red Vespa and parking it right outside of her house with his incredibly colorful backpack of maps and flags, he starts to look around, and he finds a black backpack on the bed, and he finds the statue Jessica had bought. He finds Polly Pocket's journal, and he hears the CW coming back. So he goes down the stairs and slams her across the face with the statue. We fade to black. We come to, and he has her tied up. He throws water in her face, and he's like, I fell for a lot of things with you, and I don't care how drunk I get. I never forget banging a woman, and I would have known if I had banged you. And I'm like, that's what you use as the evidence? Not like, I know you photoshopped. I know you took over her life. I found her journal in your backpack. It's like, how dare you try and think that I banged you? I did not. Where is she? He then reads the CW her journal. He's like, I thought you were taking advantage of her, she says. Like, her stuff, the house, but like, this is ridiculous. And he like goes in on her. He was like, you took over her life. You're spending her money. And the CW goes, well, she broke up with you. She thought you were controlling her life. And like, clearly you track everything she does because how did you even find this house? We never told you. And obviously you found it somehow. And I was like, wow, that's actually a really good point. Like, you tracked that down, even though she had been like, I'm breaking up with you. And he says, do you do this to feel liked? And she's like, how long have you been keeping tabs on her, Ryan? Where is she? I will call the police. And the CW's like, and say what? That you beat up a woman? That you tied her up on a whim? Because I took your girlfriend? She's like, when the cops see the messages that you hit her, and he's like, you sent those. And she's like, doesn't matter. Who are the cops going to believe? You, who were tracking her and showed up, or me, the woman tied up in the chair? You're backed into a corner, B. It's like, what did you do to my girlfriend? And she's like, look, I didn't do anything, but I can take you there. He's like, fine. He unties her, and she leads him through the darkness. Where are we going? And she's like, it's just up here. She leads him to the boat, and he's like, what? And in that moment, she knocks him into the water, and they fight under the water. He gets a knife, because of course he was like, walking her with like, I've got something, and slices her arm, but she is behind him and holding him down under the water and ultimately drowns him. He dead. We have a whole fight sequence under the water. She loads him into the boat and covers him with a blanket. 100 times better than in something in the water, but she's alone. And she heads back and she takes a shower. She washes all of the blood off. She fixes up her arm, and then she opens up the laptop and she posts a photo of Ryan from Polly Pocket's account. And she says, I've been holding this in my heart for a long time, and I think I have to speak up. Ryan was emotionally and physically abusive to me over the last 3 years that we were together. And for the longest time, I didn't know what to do. Smiley face emoji. And the CW goes through his bag and finds an engagement ring, and she puts it on like, ooh. And she goes to sleep. The next morning, she enjoys her juice on the patio. She's getting lots of great feedback as Polly Pocket about how she's standing up about being in an abusive relationship. And her bestie, the guy, has done a video with a GIF that says content warning. And he's like, I always knew Ryan was a predator. I never trusted him. Love you, girl, for standing up. And I'm like, which one is it? You love her, and then you're like, Ryan, you can do better. And now you're back in love with Polly Pocket. Influencing. So anyways, she's on her computer eating what looks like McDonald's, delicious, or at least something from a yellow wrapper. And she wraps up all of Polly's, quote, work and the contracts and is like, I don't want to do business anymore. I'm getting out of influencing. End my contracts, which is like not how it works. She gets on the dinghy and she has Ryan's dead body under a blanket. She's got the suitcase and she's heading to Homer Simpson Island. She parks, jumps out, parks the boat, and she realizes, oh my God. Right by the man-made bench is a fish on a spit, meaning Polly Pocket is still alive. And remember, it's been the rainy season, which means she's been collecting water in those two water glasses and at least being able to have water. The CW is stunned. That tree that had been etched with 4 and 2 has 38 marks in it. She runs back and grabs her shovel and heads into the woods. She's wearing jeans, a tank top, sandals. She's ill-fitted for a woods brawl, and she heads deep into the belly of Homer Simpson. Where is she is the vibe. She's looking around, and she's like saying, she's like, you know who knows this island better? Me. But it's like, you know who knows it better? Polly. She's been living there for 38 days. The CW comes up to 2 like gravestones because clearly she's done this twice. And now when we think back to that drone shot that opened the movie, that was a prior victim because Polly Pocket is wearing her dusty rose-colored dress. She's not in the jeans and the tank, but similarly, very white, very blonde. So she's looking at the gravestones, and it's like overlooking these 2 gravestones that are like man-made, like wood crosses, and the water. When bam, Polly Pocket emerges, hitting her across the head with a rock. She's like, you bitch. Hits her across the face. Then Polly emerges to the sand, full of dirt. She looks clean, though. Like, considering she was there for 38 days, she has clean hair, overall put together, barely sunburned. She does have dirt on her, but you're like, it would be the rainy season, and you could have, like, washed in the water. And, like, it's giving where the crawdads sing. Like, somehow pristine, even though she's been out on an island alone with no electricity, no heat, anything. And she gets in the boat, and she sees a hand. She pulls up the blanket and just stares at a dead Ryan. In the distance, we hear a boat. Vroom! The CW comes to after having been attacked. She's still on the top of that rock. She stands up, she looks out, and she takes off running. But it's too late. Polly Pocket is already on her way. And she just sees her from afar, driving off into the distance. And the CW smiles and just starts laughing. We start getting this high beat electronic music and this drone shot over the influencer as she's driving out to sea with her dead boyfriend under a blanket and a suitcase that she does not know is a dead influencer yet. And we get influencer in our white, thin Arial font. The end.
Wow. That was
It's a
a
good
lot.
one.
It's a lot. Twist
It
on
is a
twist on
lot.
twist.
There's a lot of twists, and I have to say, like, you know, we do have like social media horror films, right? Like this one, I mean, obviously the net, iconic, which it gave me shades of with like the taking of the identity. And I just feel like the horror genre of social media has not quite like nailed it yet. You know, I think there's some good ones like Searching. I thought Ingrid Goes West, which is more of just sort of like an obsessive one, like social media-y, were good. But this was the first one that I was like, this kind of really hit at that core of like the change in you and the psychoticness. Like there was already a darkness in our Polly Pocket character that we could see that there was a dead shark-eyedness to her, but the unveiling that she had been this glowing, wonderful human and taken down maybe a little bit by the boyfriend, maybe by the influencing or whatever else, and the projecting onto the CW of like, oh, of course you wouldn't want your photo taken because you have this birthmark or something like that. All of it was, I thought, really interesting. And like living anonymously on the internet, I thought they did like a good job.
It also gave me shades of Barbarian in that the POV
Yes.
changed several times. So you focus on Polly Pocket and then on the CW and then Ryan and then back to the CW and then Polly Pocket. So it kept changing the POV. So you don't get that a lot.
No, you don't get a lot. I thought it was like a good way to handle it all and not try and make like sweeping accusations about social media, but like how we project onto others and ourselves and how we're still triggered, you know, like especially with the CW, anytime they're like, you're weird or you're creepy, you know, she gets triggered by that, even though she's trying to live weirdly as an influencer, but through someone else's eyes. It was, I thought, Cassandra Nod, who I'm not as familiar with, but who stars as CW, and there's all these articles with her about her birthmark and how she was born with it. And of course, she was, you know, like classic. Yes, young kids were mean to me. I was bullied, but it also like defined me in many ways. And she's a dancer and she's a model and she's an actress and like sort of like is like proud that it's something that identifies her and things. And so it had a lot of interesting beats to it, I will say. So go check it out. I believe you can rent it, but it's also on Shudder. It was released by Shudder, so it's called Influencer. And I've been lucky enough to have Corey Burton join me. Go also listen to episode F56, which was Dante's Peak. But Corey, thank you for being here.
You're such a great storyteller. Thank you for allowing
Oh
me
my
back.
God, Corey, stop, please go on. Just kidding. But I really appreciate it. And guys, go ahead, leave us a review, subscribe, tell a friend. And we're also up on YouTube as well. So go check that out. And of course, we will see each other on Mondays.